Buckle up, everyone. We're in for a rough ride. Yes, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to Steve Bloomer's Watching, the independent Derby County podcast. Nerves are fraying, anger is boiling, and the Rams aren't winning still as our worrying winless woes rumble on. It's now 7 games without picking up 3 points for Derby, heading into the March international break, and the Rams' New Year renaissance seems like a very, very distant memory to us fans. And let's face it, to the players and management as well. The Rams are staggering towards that final day, but we're still here too, enduring one of the most joyless Derby County seasons in more than a decade. I'm Chris. Richard's here. You right? Good weekend of sport, I gather.
Well, it was Saturday was going to be fantastic. There was cricket, 2 rugby matches and Derby on, and every single match, and as Anton can agree, went against the teams we were supporting, apart from right at the end of the day, France put a smile on my face by beating the Welsh in the 83rd minute or something. But cricket went badly, rugby went badly for England, and of course, we know what happened with Derby County. So a weekend that promised so much and ultimately left me in a pretty bad mood come the evening.
Anton, I think we're now at the point in the season where I can actually ask you, do you still like football anymore?
It's almost getting to that point. I mean, luckily there was some other sport to kind of distract me yesterday, but as Kutch said, it didn't really go that much better than the Derby game in the end.
Indeed. Well, don't forget, Steve Bloomer's Watching is partnered for the season with Derby Brewing Company, Derby's original craft brewer. Kutch, go on then. Let's dive straight in. And the most important question of the podcast, how are you getting on in your Derby County Championship manager save?
Yeah, I gave it a lot of attention Friday night, how sad, and this morning in fact. And going very well. The first season petered out a little bit, was top half for most of the season and ended up finishing about 15th. And then second season, which I just finished, I went on a 8-game winning streak, got up to second. And then Chelsea picked me to 4th on the last day of the season. So I just missed out on Champions League qualification. But Mark Poom in the team of the year for the Premier League as goalkeeper. Steph Johnson still doing a great job defensive midfield. And they're pretty much the only 2 players really left in my first team that I inherited. Malcolm Christie's still doing a job. Craig Burley's still doing a job from the bench. But we're looking ahead to hopefully a tilt at the Premier League in my third season and the UEFA Cup as well.
Anton, we were talking on the last podcast which you weren't on about how we're getting through lockdown. I thought I was showing off with my pizza oven and my lawnmower, but you hired a hot tub recently.
Yeah,
absolutely extraordinary. I think you've just won lockdown.
Well, I'm doing my best. Yeah, incredible scenes in my tiny London garden. It was Beth, my wife's birthday, a couple of weeks ago. So I had the tricky task of planning a lockdown birthday, which I'm sure many of our listeners have also done. But I found out that you can hire hot tubs. Who'd have thought there was a market for that before lockdown? But it was great. Yeah, they turned up with this flat packed hot tub. Built it in about 20 minutes and just had to fill it up and plug it in and we were away. It was a great few days and felt very lavish, kind of sipping wine all day in the hot tub.
Nice. Do you get any sort of guarantees about how rigorously the hot tub has been cleaned before you get it? I don't know, that'd just be my immediate concern, if I'm honest, about the hygiene levels of it.
I preferred not to think about it. I mean, they did give us like a chlorine filter thing to at least mask any kind of smells or nastiness that's in there, but I think it's best not to think about that, to be honest. It's
a risk you've got to be willing to take, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
Just get in there. Look, we could talk about all that sort of thing for a very long time, but we all know it's difficult right now. It's a real tricky, gloomy period for our club, culminating in another defeat in this run of 7 without a win against Stoke City at the weekend in Derby's most recent game, going down 1-0. Boys, you both sat through that one. I was literally watching paint dry again, but I've caught up with the best of the action. Wayne Rooney said afterwards that the first half of that game felt like a testimonial. Is that how it felt to you both watching along at the time?
Yeah, I know what he's saying. It was an interesting one because we were talking in the WhatsApp group during it, and I kind of said it was kind of blood and thunder without the thunder, and Anton said it was maybe without the blood as well. And it was kind of high tempo, wasn't it? But without any quality from either team, as has been the case in quite a few recent games. No real chances created. It was kind of the ball was just kind of going back and forth. But I thought both teams tried to play a little bit more than we've seen in some other games, but no one really created anything. It's a really odd game, actually, and maybe testimonial is the right way to describe it. But if that is the case, that's pretty damning on the squad and on Wayne Rooney and the management staff in terms of preparing a team mentally for a game. When all the games are so important at the moment, particularly when you're playing teams like Stoke, who really have nothing to play for at the moment, there's no excuse for the team to be playing in a kind of lax attitude, which I don't know. I think the effort was there. It's just bereft of quality or any ideas whatsoever in terms of how to create chances.
I don't know if the intensity of this season and so many games in such a short space of time has had an impact. I'm sure it's had some impact, but we seem to have digressed completely from the kind of fast-paced, energetic, direct team that looked so good during the first couple of months of Rooney's spell to loads of sideways, backwards passing again, kind of very similar to what we saw towards the start of the season. And it's the energy is I mean, although you said, Kutch, that energy was okay yesterday, it was a lot of kind of huffing and puffing without really doing that much. And what we saw in the first couple of months of Rooney's reign was we put teams under pressure. We made it difficult for them to play out and to play against. And we also got lots of men into the box. We got the ball forward much more quickly, which we're just not seeing that in the last few games. And it means we're not creating chances. We're making it far too easy to defend against. And it's difficult to see how that changes. I think, we were saying that the international break couldn't have come at a better time, really. And hopefully 2 weeks off to reset, recharge the batteries. Hopefully it gives CKR a chance to kind of recover from the niggle, which was pretty evident yesterday. And we can come back a completely fresh and new team after the international break.
I think Rooney got it wrong big time with playing CKR. He obviously was not fit whatsoever to play. And I felt like we were playing with 10 men a lot of that match. And that's not really a reflection on him. He obviously put himself through pain. And I think Rooney said he had some injections to get him through the game. But right from the off, it was obvious that he wasn't mobile enough to really offer the kind of presence that we expect from him. And if he's not able to offer that physical presence and battle with the centre-backs and hold the ball up, then there's really no point in him being on the pitch. And I know that we'll come on to Martin Waghorn later, but if he's not going to play Waghorn because he's fallen out of him on the training ground, he should have played Lawrence as a false nine or Juzvac as a false nine or someone else. I just thought that it was apparent very early that CKR wasn't going to have any impact on that match whatsoever. And I thought Rooney got that wrong. And that may well have had an impact. I'm not excusing the rest of the players because it was pretty awful, but that may well have had an impact on the kind of feeling to the match when you've got such a character like that who's so subdued and the team rely on as their talisman. I think that would have had an impact.
Now you mention it, it does seem like it's a bit of a sort of cutting off your nose to spite your face sort of a move from Rooney, really. Like the fact is he played Colin Kazim-Richards when he wasn't fit. CKR had to have injections to play against Stoke. Rooney would rather do that than play a player who is perfectly fine in a centre forward position in Waghorn because he didn't train well for one day. Is that really the wisest thing to do? Look, we'll come on to that later. But Anton, you were just going to jump in there.
You spoke about CKR. He is the link between the midfield and defensive players and our front three, certainly, and probably the midfield players as well, because the way we've played under Rooney is to get it forward very quickly in quite a direct way, straight to CKR, who is brilliant at bringing it down, bringing other players into play. But because he didn't have the mobility and energy to do that yesterday, it meant that certainly the wide men were so disconnected from the rest of the team that we just didn't have an out ball at all. So the long balls that we were trying to play to get it forward quickly were just not sticking at all. And it meant that Sibley and Roberts just couldn't really get in the game, to be honest. They were the only ones that looked like they could make something happen, but we just didn't find feet often enough at all to pose any real threat at all.
Yeah, I mean, more changes made in this game. You got to ask if Rooney is making sort of too many, really, or on the other hand, does he deserve sympathy for having to make these changes because the players are so out of form. But look, either way, personally, after that sort of result, I did just feel as low as I did, and I do right now, as we did after those Coventry and Wickham results earlier in the season, just after Cocu got sacked, when we had to win those and drew both of them. I think there's games, there's results and performances which really test your patience as a fan, and this was one of them. Like, no shots on target and 34% possession against a mid-table team who were 10 points off the playoffs, as was said, with 8 games to go. They're not going to go up. And this was a real chance. We've always said that generally we think this Derby side have enough to stay up. But that was only because the teams below us have all been awful. But this weekend, Kutch, Rotherham get a great win at Bristol City. Sheffield Wednesday get a great win at Barnsley. The teams below us are starting to fight. They're starting to show spirit just at the exact wrong time when our arses are falling out and we're just phoning in the rest of this season. They're winning, Wednesday are winning, we can't score, let alone win. I was confident that I thought we'd have enough, but I'm not confident anymore.
No, and I agree when you see the performance against Stoke. As I said, a team with nothing to play for, as you said, 10 points off the playoff, and they're not going to get there. They probably don't believe they're going to get there, but they're safe. And you look at our performance in a game like that, and yeah, you could say it's the end of a very busy period. Both teams are knackered, so it wasn't a good game. Maybe we come back revitalised against Luton, but every game we don't win just puts more and more pressure on future games, obviously. And as we said before, 50 points is probably the target. We've got 40, so we're probably looking for 3 wins and then maybe a draw or 2. You look at our fixture list in April, before we get to that all-important home match against Birmingham City, which could be huge, we've got 3 teams that have got nothing to play for, in my opinion, a bit like Stoke. We've got Luton on that first game back on Good Friday. We've then got Reading and Norwich, and we've got Blackburn away, who really a mid-table kind of no man's land, and then Preston North End away before that Birmingham game. In my opinion, we've got to be looking at wins against Luton, Blackburn, and Preston to make sure we're not in a ridiculously nerve-wracking pressure game against Lee Bowyer's Birmingham City.
Yeah, we'll talk through the goal against Stoke in a second, Anton, but the goals at Derby's attacking threat at the other end. We've scored 27 goals this season. 27. It's the 4th lowest total this season for any team in EFL. It's only Wickham, who are bottom of the Championship, Southend and Grimsby, who are 23rd and 24th in League Two, who have scored fewer goals than us at this stage. And we're managed by England's greatest goal scorer. It's pathetic. It's absolutely abysmal. Like, what's going wrong with us going forward, and what happened with the goal that we did concede against Stoke at the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it is pathetic. You're absolutely right. I actually don't think the chopping and changing that Rooney's implementing is helping that at all. I'm a big fan of having some flexibility tactically, so you kind of can keep your opponent guessing and you can change things up mid-game if your initial approach isn't working. But there's a fine line between tactical flexibility and having a bit of a lack of identity and no real instructions for the players knowing what to do on the pitch. And it's often felt like that over the last few games, certainly. The attacking players in particular haven't really fully understood their roles, their position and positional play and where they're supposed to be. And when you're not in form, especially as a striker, it just makes it that much harder to kind of get that goal and get back into form when you've got to spend all your time thinking about what you're supposed to be doing on the pitch rather than focusing on your technical play and kind of getting in the box and finishing those chances. They've got to think about what they're doing, and the team, especially going forward, looks completely disconnected, which means we're not creating chances, and they're never going to get back into form if we keep chopping and changing. And that goes for both personnel and tactics, because if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing on the pitch, that doesn't help. But if they're only getting 90 minutes at a time and don't get a goal and get replaced, it's just not helping confidence. And I guess for the goal, I actually thought it was a very good bit of play from Nick Powell. So he kind of picked the ball up on the edge of the area, and it was probably the only bit of brilliance all game, to be honest, from either side. It was a lovely little ball in from quite a central position to get a cross in like that. I mean, I think it was Bird who was tracking Nick Powell, maybe a slight criticism of him not getting close enough to allow that ball in, but he did kind of just jink it to the side, which was very good. And he put that delicious ball in, which was just begging to be attacked. Again, potential slight criticism of I think it was Knight tracking the man at the back post to not get goal side, but it was a difficult one to deal with, to be honest. And those kind of balls in and that kind of good play often leads to a goal. I don't think we can complain too much our defence from that. It's more sits with us going forward and not creating chances, because if you don't score goals, you can't win games.
Coach, I'm going to have to ask the question because the sad state of affairs is that this run of form is awful. I would say that you've got to keep this in perspective. And when we had a run of form this bad before, we did get out of it, and we can get out of it. But look at what Rooney's done. When he took over and when Koku went, we were rock bottom of the championship. We were dead bottom, one win in 13, 14 games. And the writing looked like it was on the wall, even at that early stage in the season. And it wasn't so long ago that he did take us through a fantastic run of form before things have gone badly wrong in the last few weeks. So I would say that, look, if we do stay up, I think it's got to be a success of sorts for this season, given how bad the first half of the season was. And I would say that we do have to stick to our guns if we stay up and give Rooney a better window, a full pre-season, and give him a chance. But there are increasing voices who aren't saying that, like we asked our listeners, just to send us their thoughts on the current situation. Not much positive stuff coming through, really. Guy Pearson asked us if we think that Rooney and co are just too naive and inexperienced for this job. And Sam Mace, a regular listener, asked us whose idea was it to put Rooney in charge as permanent manager when he hasn't got his badges, when there were people like Paul Cook available. I guess it's so hard to say because, look, the bottom line will be whether we stay up or not. But Rooney isn't really doing his long-term future at the club any favours at all right now, is he?
No, he's not in his current run. He's not. I think, as we probably discussed at the time when he was appointed, I'm sure the brief was keep Derby up, and it's all form clouds judgment. Now, I'm not defending Rooney for the last few matches at all, but form clouds judgment. If, let's say, we hadn't gone in on that good winning run and that unbeaten run when we were not conceding any goals, and we just kind of, these wins had come here and there, and maybe we won the last one and drawn one before that, and we found ourselves in the current position, you go, oh, Derby moving in the right direction. It's great that he's got us off the bottom into 19th place, but because we kind of went for a good run and now we're going for a terrible run, it all looks really bad again. And I get that, and I'm not excusing it, but depending on at what moment in your journey you're in, it looks very different. Now, if Derby, say, lose every game now from now on, but we still stay up because Rotherham also have lost every game since then I think Wayne Rooney probably should go. So what I'm saying is that he could keep us up, and yet I think he could still go. But Derby aren't in the place to sack a manager, are they? So look, he's done an okay job because he's got us out of the relegation zone. He took over when we were bottom. The squad is crap, as we've said numerous times. I still think the squad has got enough in it to stay up. Funnily enough, though, because time is now against us in a way, in the sense that we're in a bad run of form and there's 8 games left, I'm actually more nervous now than I was when we were rock bottom of the table, because I always looked at that and went, well, there's so many games left, I feel like we'll get out of it. Now, when you're in a bad run of form and you don't even look like scoring, and you see, as you said, Chris, Coventry, Rotherham picking up points, Birmingham picked up a win in their first game under Lee Bowyer before dropping points again. It looks bad again. I think when Wayne Rooney was appointed, I think all of us, I can't remember if it was all of us, I certainly wasn't in the camp of hiring him. I was then very pleasantly surprised and quite impressed by a lot of his early work. And now and we said at the time, the real test for any new manager is how do you turn it around when it starts going badly? He hasn't turned it around yet. We might come back after the international break and look at a different team again, pick up a few wins and be relatively safe. And if that's the case, brilliant. And we can go into the summer, ownership aside, looking forward to a better season next year. But for me, it all depends on the next few games, because Rooney needs to turn it around.
One of the most recent games before Stoke, of course, was the quite surprising 2-2 draw at home to Brentford, featuring what was quite clearly the biggest contrast in first and second half performances I've seen in years, frankly. I mean, we should have been completely out of sight at half time. Brentford could have easily been 3-0 up, if not more. In the second half was probably one of the few times we've actually played well in the last 7 games since that last win against Huddersfield. A lovely little goal from Louis Sibley, you'd have to say. Great finish and really proving a point in the way that he took that. Some great work from Patrick Roberts in the build-up to that as well, which was great to see. But the goal from Sibley came, boys, after some pretty public trashing of him by Wayne Rooney, not for the first time recently either that the manager has chosen to do this with his own players in the press. Earlier in the season, it was Tom Lawrence for not working hard enough or being fit enough. Then it was Sibley saying that he has to do more. And even after the Stoke defeat, most recently, he said this about Martin Waghorn. He said, Wayne Rooney said, "I've made it clear to all the players I want you to train well every day. Of course, there are days you don't have the best training session, but I want you to give everything you can. My message to the players when I first took over was, if you're a senior or younger player, if you don't do that, you won't play." And that was the reason. When we're in this league, I can't afford to carry players and have players with that attitude. He went on to say that he thought Waghorn trained well on Thursday, but then he said Friday, in my opinion, wasn't acceptable in terms of the behaviour, not so much the training. So, yeah, once, I maybe twice, I get it. But to do this 3 times in public, I don't know, it just doesn't, I'm just not sure it sits well with me, really, especially for a manager with his lack of experience, even if he had the amazing playing career that he did. And I just think that if you keep doing it, for a start, the message sort of loses its impact, I think. It's a bit of a risky gamble because it can get something out of a player, as it did with Sibley, or you can end up just alienating that player and making things worse. And in terms of perception and how it looks, to have to do that 3 times, I don't know. Do you just wonder if it gives the impression that the manager, we've got a manager whose squad aren't all 100% playing for him? Or is that oversimplifying the issue?
I'm going to stick up for Wayne Rooney here, actually. I think particularly those 3 instances that you cite there, they're all quite different. Tom Lawrence, he was kind of questioning his fitness, and we know now that Tom Lawrence had quite a difficult journey back from quite a complicated injury, and Wayne Rooney may well have misjudged that one where Lawrence just wasn't getting fit because he had this constant niggle going on, and I think Lawrence has said it's been the most frustrating injury he's ever had because it just kind of wouldn't ever go away. So that one, I think the jury's out on how Rooney dealt with that, but Lawrence doesn't appear to be too upset by it. The Sibley one, I think Wayne Rooney got what he wanted. He got a reaction from him. He said, I want to see more from Louis Sibley. He's got to contribute more with goals or assists. And the next game, he comes on and scores a great goal. And he shows the Louis Sibley of the back end of last season. So for me, the Louis Sibley one is a big tick in Rooney's corner. Nothing else but a big tick in Rooney's corner. Sibley didn't back it up against Stoke, but none of the players did, to be honest. And the Martin Waghorn one, well, time will tell. I believe he's out of contract in the summer. We've got no idea what Wayne Rooney is talking about when he says, his bad behaviour in training on Friday. If that's just him mucking about and being a bit over the top in terms of not concentrating, is it something worse than that? We've got absolutely zero idea with what's gone on. And again, we'll see when we return against Luton in 2 weeks' time after the international break. Is Waghorn back in the squad? If he does play, has he got a performance in him? So I think the jury's out. As I said, I think the Lawrence one is a bit of a weird one. I think Louis Sibley, he got a reaction that he was asking for, and Martin Waghorn will wait and see.
So we did actually put this one out to you guys, our listeners, on Twitter, just saying, what do you think, really? Is this the approach that Rooney should take? To be fair, a lot of people mirrored what you have said there, Kutch. Paul Starkey said, in some respects, it's refreshing, but I still think it's more useful behind closed doors. James Hudson said, it doesn't seem to be working at the moment. The players seem paralysed by fear. Isaac Mallinson said, I wouldn't mind if it was making a difference, but it's not. So it's unacceptable, really. And then went on to say that you could even see it as a form of bullying. Who knows if Waghorn is still suffering from mental health issues? With no idea on the background on that one, it has to be said. Paul Turner said, "Good luck, Wayne. You might need it, going on previous managers' attempts to get rid." Darren B said on Twitter, "When you've played with the world's best, you have a right to call it how you see it. I fully support Wayne Rooney calling out players who don't feel like putting a shift in. If you can't be bothered to roll your sleeves up and fight, then we're in the trenches, then go." Mark Lawson said, "It has to work, is my opinion. It depends on what's happening behind the scenes, but if he's doing it, then there has to be a response, and not just from the players, but also the squad." So yeah, loads of responses to that one. Sorry we couldn't get through all of them, but yeah, there we go. So yeah, more in a second on Steve Bloomer's Washing. Don't forget to give us a follow on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, at Steve Bloomer Pod, and Instagram.
Hi, I'm Paolo Wanchop, and you're listening to Steve Bloomer's Washing.
Almost obscured on his way to trying to get there, but Thorne is plenty of physical presence about him. That's why Derby can look at the other end. Bamford's got the ball away. It's been done really well. Chance for a third here. There we go. What a beautiful break that was from Derby County. And Jeff Hendrick gets in on the act.
Now, with off-field uncertainty surrounding Derby County all season, the club have certainly provided plenty of intrigue and drama for the press to cover this year, and that's once again been the case for John Percy, the Daily Telegraph's Midlands football reporter, who joins us on the podcast now. John, you're the only guest to appear for a third time, and I guess, as ever, that's more due to basically the fact that it's been another year and another year of chaos for you covering our club.
It's absolutely never dull at Derby, is it? Ever. There's always something happening. There's always intrigue, drama, controversy, off-field, on-field. It's never dull. I always say to my office, obviously based in London, that covering Derby, it could almost be a full-time job. You know, forget your Leicesters, West Brom, Aston Villas. You know, covering Derby's a 24/7 job in itself.
I'm glad we're keeping you busy, if nothing else. So you exclusively revealed a few days back last week that Derby's takeover by BZI is off.
Yeah,
confirming the suspicions that Derby fans have had for a few months now. I mean, what was your reaction to hearing the news, John? Were you half expecting it, like a lot of Derby's fans were?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was no surprise to me whatsoever. I mean, I was actually amazed that it had taken so long, but I just think it had gone so far down the line. I mean, everything was agreed. I mean, this is the thing. It's not just like somebody had told Mel Morris, "Yeah, we'll pay you next week," and Mel and Stephen Pearce just believed it. It was, you know, there's contracts have been signed, everything's been agreed, paperwork, you know, days and days and days and months of contact. All the things have been exchanged. So, but obviously it got to a point, especially maybe towards the end of the year, Christmas Eve, I think was one deadline they missed, where you're thinking, I smell a rat here, but I think obviously it got to the stage Monday was the final deadline set for them, and the communication I don't think has been brilliant through the whole process. I think it's been quite sort of, you know, it's not been consistent. It's been consistent in terms of the contact talking to them, but, you know, they've not always been able to provide the answers and the sort of what they wanted to be hearing. So I don't think there was any surprise that it had taken so long. I remember somebody very early in the process saying, "This is never going to happen, just forget it." And I wish I'd listened to him, to be honest. And, you know, I'm sure Mel Morris would have heard the same as well.
I mean, I guess with all that in mind, you said the contracts were signed. It felt like it was getting towards a done deal, albeit very slowly. So I guess the question is, why didn't it happen?
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Or the $60 million question or whatever. But I mean, the final bit was obviously sending the money over, and that never came. I mean, there's obviously rumours of a backer pulling out in December, which maybe messed it up. I mean, there's also been people, because obviously I'm speaking to other people who have doubted it all along, like I've said, and they said he hasn't got the money. You know, the money's not there. You know, it won't happen. These people are time wasters. I mean, obviously you've got to be careful because these people, I'm sure, are credible businessmen. But in terms of buying football clubs, this is the third time now. You know, Liverpool to a lesser extent, obviously Newcastle, and now Derby. So, you know, you have to question what the motives are, whether they're serious, how they've got themselves into the position three times. How has it been allowed to happen? But in Derby's defence, as I've said, this, it was all, the paperwork was all there. All the contracts had been signed. It was just that final bit, obviously the most important bit that never happened.
So you've said there that BZI missed 3 separate deadlines. They were writing statements in tandem with the club at one point. They appeared to brief the local and the national media that it was definitely happening. So when it didn't, how does that make you feel as a journalist? Because, it must be equally frustrating for you that you're being fed information which turns out to not be true, and it sort of affects your credibility as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's obviously the life and times of a journalist, but you live and die by your information. But this was takeover stories are traditionally the hardest to do. I mean, you speak to people who cover the Newcastle one, they were told all the time it's going to happen Monday, and it never did. So you're always putting yourself in the eye of the storm. But ultimately, in my defence, you can only do what you were being told by the people that have been told what they've been told, if that makes sense. They are passing on information that they've been told to journalists, through contacts, sources and everything. You're only going from what you've been told. And when you've been definitively informed that it will be on a certain date, you have to take their word for it. I mean, the conversations, Derby fans, yourself, you don't hear, myself, Steve Nicholson at the Derby Telegraph, we were asking these questions. We were saying, don't you think this is ridiculous how it's just taking so long? We're not just like picking up the phone and thinking, let's just report that, let's look after them. We were giving them a hard time as well, saying, don't you think you're being taken for a ride here? This is getting ridiculous. You said this last time. Why is it taking all this? We weren't just meekly taking all this information. But obviously, when you're being told that this is going to happen, as Derby were, you've got to take the word for it.
Yeah, and you mentioned before that you were getting this information and you found out it wasn't happening, and it does affect the feedback you get from Derby fans. You were saying as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember one weekend. I mean, obviously, I think it was after the Chorley defeat. The information was that this will get sorted. I think it was on the Wednesday. Obviously, Rooney got the job, which everyone suspected was going to happen. By the end of that week, they were saying it will definitely be sorted. I think the word even was formality. I mean, this is how far it was. It wasn't just a case of we think it might be done. It was like, yeah, all done, all sorted. We've got it all. It'll be Wednesday. And then you're getting through the week and the days are building up and you're saying, has the money dropped? No. Has the money dropped? No. So then obviously one Sunday I'm walking around Woollerton Park in Nottingham getting abuse off Derby fans for saying it was a week. And you know what? I can understand it because I'd reported that. You'd assume that everything you write is correct. You sometimes are going to be wrong, obviously, but I mean, I can just understand, the Derby, the frustration of the Derby fans. You've had 4 months of this, and personally, I'm just glad it's all come to an end because it was just getting ridiculous. Just to keep asking when's it going to happen. It clearly wasn't ever going to happen.
That's it. Well, me and you both. So moving on from that, John, what can you tell us about the potential new investors? Derby fans have seen the name of Eric Alonso before, and more on him later. And you've also mentioned 2 other consortiums who are said to be credible. Do you see Derby finding new owners by the summer?
I've been told that the other 2, along with Alonso is obviously talking to them, been talking to them for quite a while. The other 2 are said to be credible. I think one of them was described as a dream come true if it was to happen. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've got no idea who it is at this moment. I'm obviously working on it. I do believe someone connected to a leading football agent. I'm obviously none the wiser at the moment, but it was told to me that if they could get this one over the line, which from my information isn't as advanced as the other ones, but if it was to get over the line, this one would be a very, very, very good one. So watch this space. But I think obviously the dream scenario now for Derby is to have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 battling each other to try and get it. But just going back to the BZI party and the takeover, the other thing that needs to be also said was they had gone so far with the process that nobody could even steal in and take it. It had gone way beyond due diligence. I'm not an expert on things like this, but I was told that no one could just sort of say this isn't happening. Could we steam in and take it? Because it had gone that far. I mean, that's how down the line it was. But yeah, Eric Alonso's talking to them. There are other people. Whether it's done this season for the summer, I don't know. I mean, obviously they started talking to BZI in April last year, so that's nearly 11 months of talk. So these things these things always take time. So I've got no idea how long it will take.
And it's been, overall, this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. It's been an almost unbelievable year for Derby, even by our standards. The You mentioned last week that the EFL appeal is going on, and that started a few days ago after Derby were cleared of breaching spending rules on the amortisation of intangible assets. How likely is it, do you think, that their appeal could be successful?
I'd be surprised if it's... I mean, Derby are very confident on this one. They always were. I think they've even in their statement when the charges were dropped, they'd backed up why they believe they were okay. I mean, I'd be surprised. From my information, it could even just be a fine at the very most. But obviously, then you've got the Richie Keogh case next week as well. So, as we've said, it's never dull, is it?
So with Keogh, it was my understanding that he had won his appeal against his dismissal from the club. You're saying that there's that one's still rumbling on?
It's still rumbling on, yeah. That will go before a tribunal next week, I think. Derby have submitted their evidence. Richie Keogh has submitted his. And there will be a verdict by the end of the month on that as well, I think. The report a few months ago that he'd won was a bit premature because the Derby evidence was still to be heard. They've got to put their submission forward and it will be decided by an independent tribunal.
Well, just finally, where does all this leave Derby's long-term plans with Wayne Rooney then? I know a lot of it depends on what division we'll be in next season, as it does with the ownership issue, but from the people you're talking to and what you're hearing, do you think Rooney will be back in the summer to go after the targets that he wants and needs?
Well, I mean, that's obviously once again linked to the takeover, isn't it? If anything does happen, because I wouldn't think money will be significant if Mel Morris is still the chairman and owner by the summer. I can't really see massive amounts of spending, probably because of the P&S rules already. I think it'll be a lot of trading, maybe a sale or two, which is, to be fair, common for most championship clubs. I mean, you look down the road at Forest, they sell one a year. I think the model at Derby is to do the same. I think even at Norwich they do the same. So I think there would probably be another big sale at the end of the season, like there was in January with Gordon to Liverpool and a few of the other players. So I think there'll be one of those, but it's whether they can get this takeover over the line. I mean, Wayne's got his targets. I think he's already working on them now. It's just whether he can get the funds to get them all.
Well, there you go. Well, John, look, thanks ever so much for talking to us. I'll leave you to it. I'm sure you're very busy, but hopefully next time we speak, you'll be reporting, more positive news for the future of our club in the meantime. But John, thanks so much again.
All the best. Cheers.
So that investment from Bin Zayed International finally off the table then. I guess the general feeling, Kutch, is that, this was one of the worst kept secrets in the club and in football. So I guess that the general feeling was it ever really on in the first place, do you think?
Yeah, I was doing a bit of research today about both the Sheikh and also some of the people linked with Derby who might be hearing about more in the future. But yeah, I mean, it feels stupid now that, well, not as stupid as Mel should feel, but it feels stupid now that we kind of all got sucked in by it. We recorded a few pods around November, December time. We had Ryan Conway on talking about it, debating the human rights issues associated with Saudi Arabia, with United Arab Emirates, and talking about transforming the club with billions of pounds, and it all feels rather silly. And no one should feel more silly, I imagine, than Mel Morris. And going back through, looking again, rereading the articles that we read at the time about their attempts to buy Newcastle and their attempts to buy Liverpool, it does look like it's a bunch of chancers, to be honest, who have taken a few clubs for a ride, and no one more so than Derby, because Derby, the ones that went the furthest down this route. Mike Ashley hadn't got quite this far, or didn't let it rumble on as long, for sure, as Mel Morris did. And what worries me about that is it shows how desperate Mel is to sell, and if they were willing to go this far down with some people, but it appeared never really had the funds or the motivation to back it up, then what are we in for next? It seems that we have dodged a bullet, but we don't know what other bullets there are to come.
This is it, isn't it, Anton? It's just, you do have to wonder just how was it ever allowed to rumble on this long, really? You wonder if was Mel Morris trying to save face almost after it went on for this amount of time. We do know, in fairness, that he has suffered health problems, for which we obviously send our best wishes and hope that he is recovering or has recovered from those. But I just wonder if he was continuing with this venture more out of hope than expectation towards the end, really. I mean, my favourite description of BZI, which one of our listeners tweeted us with, actually, is that they're just tyre kickers. as in, they're just people who express an interest in buying something but don't actually have the money or even want to, particularly. But for me personally, it's such an embarrassing episode, isn't it? And it's just you see what's going on the pitch at Derby, and that's embarrassing. And then you look at what's going on off the field, and that's arguably even more embarrassing. And the signs were there for us, weren't they? Like, the signs appear to be there that it wasn't going to happen, even though Stephen Pearce went on national radio to say that they were just waiting for the cash to happen. It was all waiting to be legally cleared. But what is clear now is that, and what people have warned us about for months, is that Bin Zayed International have just completely taken our club for a ride. Along with everything else that's happened this season, it's left out the credibility of Derby County and the reputation of Derby County about as low as it has been for more than a decade, for more than 10 years. The whole thing has just been a complete shambles, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, the most bizarre thing is that it's just rumbled on for so long. As you were saying, the kind of red flags were appearing towards the end of last year. And I mean, certainly in January, I mean, we as fans all seemed pretty convinced, and we all seemed to know it was off at that point. So I'm not really sure why it's taken so long for it to be officially signed off as completely off the table. I don't know what's been happening over the last 2 months, and it is embarrassing for the club. But all we can do now is kind of put it behind us and move on to the next prospect, because it's clear that we do need someone in. Mel wants to hand it over as quickly as possible, and we as a club desperately need something to happen, because what we don't want to get to a stage of is not having anything by the summer, and then that ruins yet another transfer window and potentially yet another season as well. So it's good that it's finally officially been kind of taken off the table, and we can look ahead to some other potential prospects.
Let's say this what it is, Kutch. This is a huge summer for our club, isn't it? Depending on how this ownership issue gets cleared up, if it does get cleared up at all. But what do we know about the latest, the latest suitor for pumping millions into Derby County? Then there's the name Eric Alonso has been touted around, a Spanish entrepreneur who has been linked with English football in the past. You've done a bit of digging on him. Can you just explain for people hearing that name for the first time, who on earth is this guy?
Well, his Twitter profile is very informative. It tells you he's a boxing promoter, investor, and entrepreneur. So that's about as clear as mud in terms of his background. But he has got a new company now called WBD Sports, which apparently is the company which he intends to buy Derby County with. It has a website which is currently under construction, so going well. And yeah, if people have heard of him, and the Football League certainly has heard of him, he was formerly an advisor to Chansiri at Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously, Chansiri's got his own problems at Sheffield Wednesday. So again, a bit like the Mike Ashley and Bin Zayed thing, you're not sure who to trust on these stories. But he fell out with Alonso, Chansiri did, and in kind of December, January last year. And then Alonso was supposedly the front man of a £30 million bid for Sheffield Wednesday in February. That was backed by an Indonesian consortium. So again, it seems like we're linked with someone in Alonso. It doesn't have money himself. He's just trying to be a front man to facilitate a deal for an anonymous group of investors, which is always enough to worry anyone. When he was an advisor at Sheffield Wednesday last year, and again, advisor is a pretty grey term. It's not really been defined by either Alonso or Chansiri. Alonso claimed to be a shareholder, which Chansiri said he never was. And according to reports, Alonso even tried offering the manager's job to Paul Cook when he didn't have the authority to do so. But again, this is kind of Chansiri's word against Alonso's. Chansiri has said a few things publicly about Eric Alonso in the press over the last couple of months, and these are quotes from Chansiri. He said, "Eric said he could bring a sponsor in. I have talked with him for more than a year, but he didn't bring any sponsors. People listen to him because he tries to say good things to the fans on social media so they can like him. I told him a long time ago that he messes with a lot of things, creating a lot of trouble for the club, so I think that we should not work together. I told him he needs to show more respect and do things in a professional way to work for us. He came back to me to say sorry and asked me to give him another chance. I told him that we couldn't trust him. So that's Chansiri's take on Eric Alonso. Again, probably two sides of the story. His company set up before, WDD Sports, is the company with no website. The company he set up to buy Derby is called No Limit Sports Limited. There is one other name attached to No Limit Sports. That is Tajindapol Samal. He doesn't seem connected to any other people in football. He's director of a few random companies on Companies House, which don't look particularly substantial. So again, I think if Eric Alonso is supposedly interested in buying Derby, it's on behalf of other people, perhaps this Indonesian consortium he was trying to put something together for Sheffield Wednesday. The thing that's also concerned Derby County and Sheffield Wednesday fans and other fans, that other clubs that Eric Alonso is being linked with, is he appears to be hanging out with Matt Southall, who was part of the shambles at Charlton Athletic over the past couple of years. There isn't actually an official direct link between Eric Alonso and Matt Southall, apart from an Instagram post from Matt Southall, which tagged Eric Alonso in and had a ram in it and was pretty cryptic about their next project together. That's definitely concerned a lot of people. So that's one I think would be concerning. Just lastly on this, Chris, I think what's really interesting article, if people do have access to The Athletic to give a read, is actually an article published a couple of weeks ago by Matt Slater about an old familiar name, Andy Appleby, who's now working with Jez Moxey, formerly of Wolves and Stoke City and Burton Albion more recently. And Andy Appleby, who used to be chairman of Derby County and kind of led the general sports entertainment phase of Derby County, they're now working together to kind of become what they call the estate agents of buying and selling football clubs. And there's a really interesting comments in there when they talk about the pitfalls of trying to sell a football club and how owners don't know. They might want to sell to the right people and do it for the right reasons, but they don't know how to do it. And there's just really good quotes in there. And this one is from Jez Moxey. He says, when Steve Morgan put Wolves up for sale in 2016, we had expressions of interest from 86 parties. But when we examined them and we checked all of them out, we found that only 3 of those could actually do the deal. Most of the rest were complete time wasters. That happens all the time. Clubs often get frustrated and end up not knowing who to trust. There are a lot of owners who are desperate to sell but don't know how to get out. They're rightly worried about their legacy and don't want to sell to someone who will just ruin it. Fans often accuse these guys of profiteering, but the reality is that most of them lose millions, often because they don't really know what they're doing. This is why the first conversation you must have is, why do you want to buy a football club? For some, it's all about their ego and the bright lights. That's fine, but be honest. Can you afford it? The question should not be, can you buy it? It should be, can you run it? And look, I was sold. I know it's easy to tell a good story, but Andy Appleby and his consortium ran Derby quite sensibly and set up the team which lost in that playoff final under Steve McLaren. And if Mel's got any sense, in my opinion, he'd be giving Jez Moxey and Andy Appleby a call to find out if they can get involved in vetting the right people and getting the right people into this club, because this is a club with a hell of a lot of potential. There's a rocky couple of years ahead, but just like when GSE took over, if you can put the time in early on, you can build a very, very stable, successful and profitable club, in my opinion. So Mel needs to hold his nerve and choose the right person, but it's not going to be easy.
Fantastic. That's great work, mate. And yeah, like the words you said there about the reasons why owners sell and why they're sometimes not very good at doing it properly. Very close to home, it's fair to say, those comments. So yeah, very relevant to our current situation. Well, look, we'll leave it there for now, shall we? We'll leave it there for Steve Bloomers Washing, episode 107, but a bit of trivia to wrap it up with, because
come on,
that is what we do. That is how we finish. We need some sort of semblance of victory for one of us before this night is out. So a question for you boys. I am a player who was born on the 10th of June 1990. Who am I?
So what, he's 30?
Yeah.
Anton, I think he might be a bit older actually, but Johnny Russell?
Johnny Russell is a good guess, but it is incorrect. Clue number 2 is my previous clubs included, but are not limited to, Barnsley and Luton Town.
The only name that springs to mind is Stevie Howard, but he's definitely too old.
Bloody hell, 30, Derby, Luton, Barnsley.
I've got a name, I think again he's far too old, but I'll go Yul Mulwenny.
He's must be 40 odd.
I love your enthusiasm, Anton, but that is massively incorrect. Clue number three. My last goal for Derby County came against the club that Derby bought me from.
Bloody hell, that doesn't help.
I've not got a single guess yet. Catch.
Yeah.
Theo Robinson.
Theo Robinson. I like it. If that's not sounding too patronising, but it's wrong. Clue number four is this. I played 80 games for Derby County between 2015 and 2019, scoring 8 goals.
Catch.
Yep.
Simon Dawkins.
Simon Dawkins. I like it. It's not
enough
the
games.
right answer.
Yeah. Too many games.
Yeah, I haven't got a name.
Clue number 5. After leaving Derby County, I was initially loaned to Sheffield Wednesday and then Bradford City, and I now play in Australia.
Catch.
Yep.
Winnell.
Sam Winnell is incorrect, but it's close. I'll give you that.
He wasn't there for 4 years, though, was he?
No.
Clue number 6, I want to say. I joined Derby County in September 2015 for a fee of around £5 million on a 4-year deal.
£5 million. I don't think he's played this much, but I'm going to go Ikechi
Anya is incorrect, I'm afraid.
Catch.
Go on.
Jacob Butterfield.
Jacob Butterfield is correct. He's nailed it.
God.
Thank God for that.
He's in Australia now, is he?
Yeah, Melbourne victory.
Down under.
Yeah, I thought we'd get that one sooner, to be honest. I think I misjudged that
Tough
one slightly.
clues.
Or
Went about as well as this weekend of sport, to be honest. So.
Yeah, maybe Jacob Butterfield just didn't make that much of an impression. But there you go. Well, thanks for tuning in. As I said, thanks for listening. We have got another episode coming out during the international break. We've got another interview with a former Ram, more to be revealed on our Twitter in the next few days. So give us a follow and look out for that one. But until then, Kutch, enjoy the international break. I'm sure you will.
I will do, very much so. Thank you, Chris.
And Anton, maybe just get in the hot tub again. I think that's all I can suggest at this point, really.
Yeah, it's the only thing for it.
Cheers, boys.